My name is Dale Caldwell. I am the Executive Director of the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship and also a professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And we're honored to have Al Titone, the District Director of the New Jersey District Office at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Al, who I'm just getting to know, is a great guy. He's really at the heart of this storm of working with small businesses. And so what I want to do is just kind of kick it off and give some perspective first on the Institute and then where we are. So let me see here if I can go down. Okay. So again, our mission is to research, promote, and support entrepreneurship with a special focus on family and veteran businesses. We wouldn't exist without our supporters, the TD Bank Charitable Foundation, Provident Bank, Sun Trust, and CIANJ, Commerce and Industry Association, New Jersey. I think Tony Russo will be joining us, and I think many folks on the call will be from CINJ, which is just a great chamber. Some of the programs that we have, we've been around 30 years. We have student entrepreneurship programs, really helping students with entrepreneurship. As I just mentioned, I teach a class called Family Business Management, and we are participating in a university pitch program where most of the major universities in New Jersey participate, which I think they have this afternoon is the finalists. We have something called a Family Business Alliance, which has been around 30 years, where we provide support and counseling with family businesses. We've had for 27 years Family Business Awards, where we identify the outstanding over 10 million and under 10 million family businesses. So we're actually taking applications. So if any of you are family businesses or know one that is extraordinarily successful in this time of crisis, please let us know. We also have a program going on now called Veterans Launching Ventures, where we help veterans or family members of veterans with business ideas to develop their business plan and develop hopefully a successful business. And then we have a small business series where we work with various groups to have some outstanding sponsors. Since then, we've really, because of the crisis, we're doing everything virtually, of course. And this Family Business Friday call, our weekly Zoom program, has been around for, Sue, what is it, 6 weeks now? I think it's 6 weeks that we've been doing this. And we have amazing people like Al. We have some accounting firms, legal firms. Next week, we have Tim Sullivan from the EDA. So these are folks who are really at the heart of what's going on during this crisis. We also have started these leadership roundtables where we have usually 5 or 6 CEOs in a room, and we have confidential peer coaching where I'm a certified coach, but we have a lot of the CEOs coaching each other. And we're looking to start this next Wednesday. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to us at rothman@fdu.edu. This is such a difficult time, and it's good to talk to other CEOs who are going through the same thing. We found that to be very, very valuable. We also have, with the FDU polling group, we have a very successful polling group within Fairleigh Dickinson University. We're doing a small business poll targeted at small businesses under 100 employees. And so this is, if anybody wants this PowerPoint, I'm happy to send it to you if you reach out to us at rothman@fdu.edu. So this sign is all too familiar for many of us on the call, that small businesses have been closed down because of this pandemic. You know, we're in an unprecedented time, but I like showing this chart, as I've done in weeks past, that to really compare the crisis in 2008, 9, and 10, where the maximum unemployment was about 700,000, versus now at 2020, which you'll see is $30.2 million. And you say, well, why is it so bad now? Well, it's so bad now because it's impacted small businesses. Most of America are small businesses. And so, you know, back then small businesses were hurt, but not to the extent that we're dealing with. And so you look at the jobless claims, I just pulled this chart down this morning, you're looking at 30.2 million jobless claims with a record of 6.9 million on March 28th, compared to the 700,000 record in the heat of the crisis in 2009. So you can see that the importance of small businesses to the economy. So, why that happens, and Al knows this all too well, if you really look at the chart of small versus large businesses, you're looking at businesses under 100 at 69%, businesses between 499 employees at 20%, and then the large businesses at 10%. So you're looking at really 90%, almost 90% of the businesses are small businesses. So when they are hurting, that's where there's a crisis. And then finally, this relief bill, I'm not sure if this, and Al can probably talk, if this is how it shook out, where you had $320 billion for the PPP, $75 billion for hospitals, $25 billion for testing, $60 billion for small business. And we are honored to have with us a gentleman who really is overseeing a lot of what's going on with the federal government support of small businesses. As I mentioned, Al Titone, the district director of the New Jersey district office at the U.S. Small Business Administration, is here. And Al, I will stop sharing, and hopefully we can share your presentation.
Oh, there I am. There, okay, let's see. You guys see it?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do today, folks, is I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to go through the two main programs that are active under the current situation. I'm going to talk to some other things that have come up over time. One of these slides are a little bit outdated, but I will make corrections as I go. As I'm sure you can all imagine, it's been a little busy. I haven't had time to adjust the slides, but the differences are minor. First thing I'm going to talk about is the EIDL loan. Now, just to be clear, EIDL is economic injury disaster loan. So it may be called disaster loan, it may be called EIDL, it may be called economic injury. They're all referring to the same thing, okay? Just background information, this started as what was called an administrator disaster declaration, meaning that each state had to individually request the disaster declaration. New Jersey actually did a great job. The NJEDA did a great job of getting theirs in. This is not something that happens a lot here on the East Coast. And people were initially complaining how West Coast states were getting ahead. It's not that they were getting ahead for any reason other than that they do a lot more of those out there. Because if you've ever noticed, they have a lot of different emergencies that happen. So that's what happened with that. We got ours in a couple of days before they made it a national. So the economic injury disaster loan, pretty much everyone is eligible for. All right, if you have a small business, whether it's a not-for-profit or otherwise, everyone is pretty much eligible for the economic injury loan, the disaster loan. You can borrow up to $2 million. Interest rate for for-profits is 3 3/4. Nonprofits is 2 3/4. The eligibility is going to be dependent on size and, to a degree, your current status. The funds can be used for pretty much any normal business practice. What they cannot be used for, and I'm going to go through this a couple of times, both here and in the PPP, you cannot try to replace lost sales with them or profits or for expansion. That's not what these loans are for. The EIDL loan in particular is to help keep you on your feet through the disaster. So what's the EIDL advance? For most of you, when you applied, you went through the application. Towards the end of the application, asked you if you wanted an advance. To date, I don't recall, I haven't heard of anybody that said, no, I don't want an advance. And what happens is at the end of the application, I'm actually going to go through the application briefly at the end, just so everybody can see what it looks like if you haven't done it already. You need to request it, and basically they ask for your bank, your account number, and your routing number. Everyone is eligible for the advance that applies, and the advance is forgivable. We don't use the G word, the grant word at SBA, because generally we don't have grants, but this is what we call a forgivable advance. So you'll get an advance. The advance is up to $10,000. It is not $10,000 across the board, which 6 weeks ago, that's what they were saying. It's about $1,000 per employee. So if you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, you'll still get that $1,000. This is what you can use it for. Fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that you would normally pay. Again, You cannot replace lost sales with profits or use it for expansion. And this, I don't remember if you can see my little cursor here. There's no requirement to repay the advance even if your disaster loan application is denied. So, and the disaster, I normally tell people always to apply anyway, because whether or not you get it, you know, it's worth the attempt. And in the end, you don't have to keep it if you don't want it. But with this, and this is only for this disaster, this has never happened before, you can get this advance and it's forgivable. Disaster loans are different from regular loans in that it's the only loan SBA still does directly. So it actually comes from Treasury through the SBA to you. Most of our other loans are done through lenders. You can apply for it here. Now, right now it is closed, so it is not taking new applications. What they are doing, just the background information they're going through, they had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of applications for this. Keep in mind, this was a system originally designed for maybe a couple of hundred applications over time. After Katrina, they upgraded it. After Superstorm Sandy, they upgraded it again, but they got a few 100,000 within the first couple of days. So they're a little bit backlogged, so they're going through that, but I understand they're also upgrading its ability. So if it comes back online, you'll be a step ahead by going through this. You don't have to take the loan if it's offered. Collateral is going to be required for loans over $25,000, but these next couple of points are actually very unique to the COVID disaster. They're not going to take any real estate as collateral. They will take business. They will put a lien on business collateral, but under normal circumstances, all SBA loans requires a personal guarantee and personal collateral if it's available. In this case, they are not going to take personal real estate. Personal guarantees will be required for loans greater than $200,000, but again, that is much larger than normally. Normally, their personal guarantees are over $25,000. You can have an existing. Sorry, spent a lot of talking over the last month. You can have a current disaster loan and still qualify for this loan, assuming all the other criteria is met. But you cannot combine them, and let me explain why. Normally under SBA rules and our normal lending programs, there's an overall max. So you can have multiple SBA loans, but there's a max of how much you can do. It's usually $5 or $5.5 million. For the disaster loans, because every disaster is unique, there is no combined maximum. So if you had 2,000 for Hurricane Irene and you had $2 million for Hurricane Irene, you had $3 million for Superstorm Sandy, you could still have $2 million here. The difference is you cannot combine them. Everything, they will remain separate. So you will have separate loans if you have this and another one. Who's not eligible? Big agriculture enterprises are not eligible, mainly because they have access to government assistance through other programs, usually the USDA. If you are in illegal activity, and that includes marijuana, folks, marijuana is still illegal at the federal level. If you have a marijuana business, I'm sorry, you're not going to be eligible for this. If you're a gambling business, casinos, racetracks, etc., you are not eligible for this. Now, this last point has actually changed a little bit. If you derive more than 50%, not a third, but more than 50% of your annual gross revenue from legal gambling activities, you will not be eligible, which means if less than half of your annual revenue is derived from gambling activities, you can still qualify for this loan. And again, this is a big exception for the COVID loan. How do you apply? When it opens, when and if it opens, you will go to this website, assuming they don't change it. I don't see why they would, and you'll fill out the application. In theory, you can apply on paper. I strongly, strongly, strongly suggest you do not do that. You will run out of time. You'll go way to the back of the line. You get on here. I actually did it when they first came out with the application a couple of weeks ago. I went online, made believe I was a business. It took me less than 10 minutes. And no, I didn't finish the application, and I didn't take any money, in case anybody of my superiors are watching. So we have resource partners across the state that can help you. Our small business development centers, our SCORE offices, our women's centers. They can help you put your financials together. They can help you, in some cases, even with the application. Certainly SBDCs and our women's centers can do that. But they can all help you, like, kind of get an idea and get your financials together and everything else you're going to need. You can use these links if you like, but also if you go to sba.gov/NJ, that's the local SBA site for New Jersey, and you'll see a big picture will come up, and you will see there's a big blue box. On the lower left-hand corner of the big blue box, you'll see a link for, I believe it says New Jersey NJ Resource Guide or Resource Guide. Click on that. It'll have, it's the latest one. It actually just came out about a month and a half ago. It has all our resource partners across the state who can assist with this. So you click on the site I had earlier, and this should come up. Please note, make sure it says this in red here, COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan application. Believe it or not, unfortunately, there's still other disasters happening all over the country. You want to make sure it's this application because there's a lot of special elements in this that are not in any of the other disaster applications. This is where people make the mistake. This is one of the biggest problems and mistakes that people made. Read through all the descriptions and make sure it applies, whatever's closest applies to you, that's the one you check. Most small businesses in New Jersey would fall under the first one. It doesn't mean it's the best one for you. So if you're a sole proprietor or you're an independent contractor, this would apply to you, but that's not the one that the first one would apply to you. That's not the one you want to check. You want to check the second one because that triggers other forms to come up that wouldn't necessarily be included. So each one triggers different forms and different questions to help make you as eligible as possible for the loan. So you really want to make sure that you do the right one here. This next one is also critical. You have to basically be able to check all of these things to qualify for the loan. If you cannot check all of these things, you will not qualify for the loan. Be honest. Don't try to play the system. Keep in mind, these are federal monies. If you play the system and you get caught, you can get into pretty deep trouble. I know people are desperate, but all of these things need to be able to be checked to get through it. And now you just start with the general information, right? So you're going to give your business name, etc. Always look at the bottom here. You'll see it says application. Are you a nonprofit organization? You know, check whatever's applicable. There's a couple of pages. There's one on the next page too, where they'll have these yes, no questions. Again, you want to be honest there because it's going to trigger different questions and different pages for you. See, again, at the top of this page, you were a franchise, yes or no. If you say yes, it's going to have other forms for you to fill out. Okay, and this is just general, you know, if it's starred, you got a red star, it needs to be filled out. Same thing, all the business information. Okay, this is, make sure you get all this stuff right, your business email, when your business was established, etc., because that's going to come in later. This is also, is your business owned by a business entity? Again, this doesn't mean if you answer yes that you're not eligible. It depends on how it's all treated. So you want to be honest with this because in the end, you're going to have trouble justifying it anyway. So click what's applicable. Then you go through your owner information. As if there's another owner, or usually over 20%, you would click this and then go through that for him or her. This next one, so these are, again, yes or no answers. Because you answer yes in this section, it does not mean that you're automatically kicked out of the program. It just will again, it'll trigger additional questions for you to answer. But you know, you don't have to be overly anxious about this. If you answer yes on any of these, it's not going to automatically disqualify you. SBA does not charge to apply for a loan, whether it's this one or the PPP. They waived everything. They waived all their fees for the lenders, et cetera. So it's perfectly legit for you to get somebody, if you want to pay somebody to help you with this loan. I mean, I think you'd be a little crazy because there's a lot of free help both from us and actually the state, but you're perfectly welcome to do that. Just understand, any fees you're paying for application are coming from whoever's helping you with the application, not the SBA. At the bottom, you see this big red rectangle here? That's where you decide if you want to apply to an advance of up to $10,000. Click on that, which I strongly suggest everyone does. And this is where it sends you, tells you your bank name, your account number, your routing number. Read through everything, agree with it, assuming you want to agree with it. If you want the advance, you have to. You click next, and this is where you are. Now, a lot of us, you know, you've gone through this, you put everything in, you're maybe a little tired. You really want to make sure this is all accurate, and for a couple of reasons. You want the right information in there, but if it's not, one, your loan could be delayed. Two, it could get kicked back to you, and then you wind up going to the end of the line. So you want to make sure this is all accurate so that when you get it in, you get it in first. And that's why I went through all this, because while the pages may differ for the type of business, that basic loan and business information, the basic business information, I should say, that's going to be required of everybody. So you can at least get your stuff together and do it. At the end, it's going to ask you if you are a robot. If you are a robot, please do not try to cheat the system. But tell them you're a robot, tell them you are not a robot, you click submit, and off you go. Let me go through the PPP, and then we'll go to the questions. Hang on one second while I switch screens. Okay, Payroll Protection Program. So again, this is offered more like our normal programs are. Okay, so it's offered through participating lenders. When this started, New Jersey had about 60 SBA approved lenders. I believe we added over 20 specifically for this program since then. And they seem to be really processing quite a few loans now, so that's good. This is a way to find the local lender that's doing the program. There's also a link. I'll send Rothman, Susan, if you would remind me when we're done. There's a couple of other links that you can also go to that will show you a list of lenders by state who have done a PPP loan. The idea here is to keep people on the payroll. We'll go through what payroll means, but one of the biggest questions we get, especially here in Jersey, the state has required me to close. I don't have, the business is not open. Do I still need to pay the employees? The answer, of course, is yes. The whole purpose of this loan is to try to keep people and businesses liquid, to try to keep them stable. Okay, so yeah, if you take the loan out, you have 8 weeks from when the loan shows up, when you get the cash in hand, to hire back the people. And we're going to go through all that later, but that's one of the biggest questions we get. Yeah, it's totally counterintuitive to how we all are used to doing business. Why am I paying people when they're not working? Well, that's what this is for. So what can funds be used for? 8 weeks, up to 8 weeks of payroll costs, which includes benefits. You can also pay interest on mortgage, rent, utilities, etc. This is an old slide, as I mentioned. Anybody can apply at this point, independent contractors and self-employed included. So these are the terms. The maximum amount of the loan is $10 million. Interest rate is 1%. The first payment's deferred for 6 months. Loan maturity is 2 years, 24 months. Keep that in mind. There's no collateral requirements. There's no personal guarantee required. There's no borrower lender fees payable to the SBA. This is all special things that does not happen under a normal SBA loan. The program is available through June 30th. How's the loan going to be forgiven? If you use at least 75% of what you borrowed for the payroll expenses, the entire loan will be forgiven. Okay, and again, it's based on maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels. I'm going to get back to this because there's a lot of questions around that. Who's eligible? Small business with 500 or fewer employees or certain NAICS codes can have more or can have more income. It depends on the NAICS code. But I will tell you now that SBA, anything over $2 million, SBA is checking closely. So this is obviously for reasons that, you know, happened over the first tranche of money. Anyway, also nonprofits are eligible, veterans organizations, faith-based organizations, sole proprietors, self-employment, independent contractors, everyone pretty much, as long as it's a legit business, is eligible for this loan. You will owe money if you don't use the loan for anything other than payroll, business costs, and all the things listed. You can all read. If you use less than 75% of the loan for payroll costs, or if you maintain borrower, staff, and payroll at less than February 15th, 2020 level. So let me, before we go to the qualifying for loan forgiveness, let me touch on a few of these things because this is where a lot of the questions run around. 75% is for full forgiveness. So let's say, I'm going to make the math easy because I'm not particularly good at mental math. So let's say it's $100,000 you borrow, right? And for whatever reason, you couldn't get people back to the level they wanted, but you could do part of it. So instead of $75,000, which would give you full forgiveness, you can only use $50,000 of the money. That's okay, because that $50,000 will still be forgiven. But the other 50 grand will have to be paid back at 1% interest over 2 years. So please keep this in mind when you're applying for this. If you can't reach that 75%, you're going to owe that money over 2 years. And from what I'm hearing, and to be honest with you, what I've heard has been wrong multiple times over the last month and a half, so who knows. But from what I'm hearing, SBA is not going to change the terms on this, mainly because the whole idea here is getting this money out to people, keeping people whole, keeping businesses whole. All right, so do the math just on $50,000 over 24 months at 1% interest. Go into one of the calculators. It can be a significant payment per month, especially for our small businesses. So you want to make that 75%. Full-time employee headcount has to be maintained as of February 15th. That's headcount. It doesn't mean those people. So again, you had 10 employees. Only 7 want to come back. The other 3, for whatever reason, aren't coming back. You don't have to rehire those same 3 people. You can get another 3 people. As long as you meet the head count, that's what's important. It's not the person, it's the head count. And there's no fudge factor on this. Salary and wages have to be maintained. They're going to be looking pretty closely at this. There is, they call it a 25%, you know, give or take on this, but if there's significant, what I'm hearing, and again, this is just hearsay from Titone, is that they're going to be, if there's a big variance, like more than, if there's a variance that they think is significant, they're going to be looking pretty hard at this. So you want to make sure that, you know, you're maintaining. What they don't want to see is you had 10 people, you have 5 people back, and everybody got huge raises. That's not what this is about. This is about maintaining the level you were at when this happened. You have until June 30th to restore full-time employment and salary levels from any changes made. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean you can wait until June 29th to rehire everybody back and pay them all at once. Okay, it means that you have 8 weeks from when that started. So as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, that's the language, right? So basically you want to do it as fast as possible, because if you have 8 weeks and it takes you 6 weeks to get everybody on board and paying them, they're going to question the amount that you've used for payroll and your subsidy may be reduced. Okay, so please pay attention for that. There's a lot of moving parts with this. These are the payroll costs. There's a lot of stuff that comes under payroll costs. So there's a lot of things you can use to meet the requirement. I'm going to read them just because I want to emphasize them. Salary, wages, commissions, or tips. Employee benefits, for vacation, parental, family, medical, sick leave, whatever that portion would be for those 8 weeks. You cannot use it like, okay, well, I pay part of their sick leave. I'm going to use this. If I can't get everybody back, I'm going to pay everybody sick leave for the year with this money. No, it's how much would you pay for that 8 weeks. Allowance for separation or dismissal, payments required for health care, payment of any retirement benefit. Again, over that 8-week period, you cannot do a total lump sum payment for the year. Okay, everything applies to the 8-week period. For sole proprietors and independent contractors, wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment would all count. And at this point, I'll stop talking and see how many questions I can answer.
Al, thank you so much. Well, that gave a lot of answers. We got a lot of questions, but Tony Russo is from CIA&J is our partner. And so, Tony, I wanted to ask you to ask a couple of the first questions, and then I'll take the questions off the chat box. And let me say initially, we may not get to all of the questions. We're going to ask you to send your questions to rothman@fdu.edu, and we'll send them to Al, and we'll get you an answer. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. Al, thanks for being on today. Great job. One of our members wanted me to ask you on that salary, and it looks like from one of your slides, for that 8 weeks, she wanted to know if she paid her employees a bonus for coming back to work or staying on. Can that count towards the forgiveness? I saw in there you had wages, salary, commissions, tips, but how about a specific bonus?
I don't believe, actually, it's interesting. That's the first time I've heard that one. I would initially say no. I'll double check on that because paying them a bonus to come back, I get why she did it, especially.
No, I'm sorry, not to come back. She didn't furlough anybody, but she based her salary, I guess, on the application. You can go back to your fiscal year 19. So right. It was a higher payroll back then. So she didn't have to furlough anybody, but
Is she a seasonal business?
No, it's a manufacturer all year round.
Then, well, we'd have to dig a little deeper into it. She can only go back to 19, as I understand it, if she was a seasonal business, because they have, obviously it's a different hiring time and process. If she's a year-round business, she had to be February 15th of this year. So
right. Okay.
There's a number of questions on that information, but generally, if it's something that she would have done normally, okay, for that 8-week period, she'd have to divide it out for the 8-week period. Because generally, if you give a bonus, you're giving a bonus for the year, right? So you got to take the 8-week period out.
Okay.
Any other question, Tony?
No, that was good. That was
good.
It.
So we're getting a lot of questions, Al, about the tax requirements. Is EIDL a 2020 tax? Is it, can you talk about some of the tax requirements?
I can't talk to any tax. I don't,
Not sure.
Tax on the EIDL monies? Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
Talk to your account.
We're getting a lot of questions about, when are they going to get their money? So, if, they from the bank, they heard they're in a pre-close status, but what does that mean? Do you know what a pre-close status means? That their bank told them that?
Every bank has their own language. Bottom line is it means that they haven't put it into the SBA yet. Mm-hmm. Generally the banks will, unfortunately, there's no standard for this. Okay, so every lender is doing a different thing. But that language tells me that they have not yet put it into have not yet submitted it to SBA.
Okay.
But with the PPP, I'm going to be honest with you, almost all the information is going to have to come through your lender or your bank, whatever, because we can't see that information. We don't see anything until it's either been approved or declined.
Can
So
you
we
apply
can't
on the
follow-
Can you apply on the SBA site for the PPP? No.
It has to go through a lender.
Okay, it has to go directly through a lender. And the other question, and over the last few weeks, we've had this, can you apply to multiple banks?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. So, can you apply to multiple banks? Yes. Should you? No. But if you do, and let me stress this because we're seeing a lot of this now, and you're causing problems if you do that to other people if you don't follow a few things. I get it. Everybody wants to know, let's get the first bank that goes in. That's great. Okay, I don't suggest it, but I get why you're doing it. But if you apply to multiple banks and you get one bank you know has now submitted you to SBA, you need to call those other banks and withdraw your application. Because here's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of banks complaining to us that people keep going in and they keep submitting these applications, and the person has already been approved or is in there already for a PPP loan. So what you're doing is you're taking somebody else's spot in line, because this lender now has just spent all this time putting your information in only to find out you've already applied for the EIDL loan. So if you're going to do, and I know I sound like I'm yelling here, but this concerns me because you're delaying the lender putting other people who have not gotten their loan in yet. So please, if you're going to apply, I can't tell you no, but if you're going to do that and you're going to apply to multiple banks, please, once you know that you've been submitted to SBA, call those other banks and tell them to withdraw your application. You've already been submitted, okay? Because you can't get multiples, and all you're doing is if you get submitted to SBA and you're in SBA's queue, there's no way for the lender at this point to tell until they go through the whole application and hit submit. Only then do they find out that you've already applied. So please, if you're applying to multiple lenders and you get in, tell the other lenders you apply through to pull your application. Make room for other people in the queue.
Excellent, thank you. And someone had a good suggestion. If you're interested in getting all of the questions, we'll try to put all the questions together and then we'll send it and get as many answers as possible. We'll send it to you if you reach out to rothman@fdu.edu. Here's another question. I recently read an opinion from a law firm that stated that the $10,000 grant will be deducted from the PPP loan, thereby reducing the amount that can be forgiven by the $10,000. Is that true?
Yeah. So it's not a grant. Again, that's why we don't use the G word at SBA. It's an advance. Okay, so if you get in a loan, this is an advance on your loan. So yes, the 10,000 or whatever number it is the loan will be reduced by that amount.
So again, there are a lot of tax questions, and I know you may not, but will businesses and independent contractors have to pay? So you said you're not sure from EIDL. And so the advance of $10,000 is considered to be a grant by the government. Now you said you don't use the term grant.
It's not a grant, it's a forgivable advance.
Forgivable.
I'm going to be honest with you. I can't answer any tax questions. I have no idea. They're going to have to go to their accountant, because as complicated as this whole program is, it's even more complicated for the accountants, because the Treasury is coming up with different things, and Treasury is the one that kind of will help determine that. So you can keep asking me the questions, but I'm going to be honest with you.
Right, okay. Well, we'll have that in a list, and we'll try to find an answer for a lot of those questions. So another one that keeps coming up is, so for the PPP, paying payroll, utilities, and rent within 8 weeks, can it be used to pay expenses before the money is received?
No, it has to be from the 8 weeks period starting when you got the cash.
Starting exactly when you actually receive the cash, or when you're approved for the cash?
When you receive it, when it shows up in your account.
Okay. Now, someone asked, where can we get accurate information about how the calculation on the PPP loan forgiveness rules? That's on your website, right?
You can go to Treasury or ours. I'll send Susan those links later.
Okay.
There's a whole section on the Treasury website about calculating that.
Now, we've had a couple questions about foreign ownership. So if a company is 50% owned by a foreign entity that's not involved in the business, does that impact their ability to receive payment?
It could. Kind of depends on how everything's set up. So again, at the Treasury website, you can go and you can look in the frequently asked questions.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And there's a section on foreign ownership. The short answer to that is, all these situations are very different, but it could. If you have a 50% ownership from a foreign company, depending how your company is set up, you could have difficulty with the PPP.
Interesting. Is there a way to delay origination of the PPP loan through an appeal process while we wait for EIDL to go through?
Not sure I got that one. What do they want to do?
So Joshua had asked, is there a way to delay origination of the PPP loan? So they would rather have the EIDL,
Okay.
EIDL. You see what I'm saying?
All right. So here's the deal. There's no way of delaying origination. Okay. This loan is hugely in demand. If you're in the queue, you're in the queue. I don't know of a lender out there that's going to say, yeah, okay, I'll hold off until you don't need this. He's just going to put you at the end of the line and just take the next bunch of folks. You don't have to take any of these if you don't want them. Okay. But just keep in mind, once you apply for the PPP and you're in the queue, that's it. You don't get another shot at it. Okay. So keep that in mind. I mean, the bottom line is with the PPP, you can take the money if you get it, and you can always pay it back. Mm-hmm. You can just take the money and pay it back if you don't really want that. That's fine. You're not going to be penalized for that. There's no penalty for prepaying. But, so the short answer is no. The long answer is I would not do that. I would take the money to make sure, because you don't know what's going to happen with the EIDL. So right. You don't have to use it if you don't want to.
So we have someone else who has two businesses, an LLC and I guess a sole proprietorship. If they're applying the two separate applications, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So the question too that is on everybody's mind is, again, this is an incredible burden on the SBA. You're probably not staffed to deal with the craziness that we're dealing with. You want to say a little bit about that? I know your people are working as hard as they possibly can. Did you want to say anything about that?
Sure. I know it's hard to be patient, especially, because everybody thinks it's all one thing, and I get that. We're federal government. We're here to help. But, for instance, in New Jersey, in my district, I have 3 lender relations specialists, myself and my deputy, basically to cover the 900,000 small businesses in the state. Okay. The SBA was not really, we weren't built for this kind of volume. So overall, I know there's a lot of people that are frustrated and they're upset, but overall, I don't think overall we've done bad. I get it with the delay with the disaster folks. Just keep in mind, again, that was a system built for 200,000-300,000 loan applications over weeks of time. They got that within the first couple of days. And I know people are asking about what's happening with EIDL, so let me just touch on that a little bit. They never stopped processing the loans. So when you heard that the government ran out of money, right. It's not so much that they actually ran out of the dollars. What they ran out of was the total amount. So let's say, again, make my math easy. Let's say it was $10,000 for the entire country. Obviously, it was much more than that. Well, they keep looking at what's in the queue and what they've put out. And when they closed it for new applications, it was because they looked in the queue and they said, well, we've done $7,000 and all these other applications are going to do more than 3,000. So we stopped taking applications. Again, they had so many applications in that first round. they didn't reopen because they're still fulfilling in a first come, first served process. And if and when they reopen, I suspect that will just continue. You'll be able to make an application, but then you go to the back of the line. On the older applications, there are two things. When you applied, if you got an application number that started with a 3, you're fine. You're in the queue. I can't tell you whether or not you'll get it. You know, they process them, but you're in the queue to get one. If you were one of the really early ones and your application started with a 2, you should have been told to reapply. Not so much that you're still, from everything I've been told, because there's big rumors about this, you still qualify, you're still in line for the loan, but you won't get the advance. What we were telling folks is reapply. It's not going to stop your place in line, and you can still get the advance. So if this opens up and you were an early applicant and you hadn't gotten your money yet, you can still apply.
Okay. Someone asked, did I hear correctly? If because of COVID, I already had debt on my credit card and I haven't gotten the EIDL or PPP yet, once the money comes in, I can't use it to pay the past credit card debt.
That is correct.
Clarification on that. Okay. Now, again, the other question that I've gotten a lot is a lot of publicly traded businesses have gotten this money. Now is that because of the banks, or talk a little bit about that? I want you to publicly kind of tell people what's going on.
I'm sorry.
Well, there are a lot of big businesses, publicly traded businesses, have received. In fact, I saw something today. They received $1 billion of this. Again, I don't know if that's true or not.
So what? As I understand it, keeping in mind, district had nothing to do with this, but as I understand it, what they did is they went through loopholes. The $10 million was a high number, and they, according to certain NAICS codes, you can be bigger. A lot of them have partially owned subsidiaries, so those subsidiaries could apply. So yes, in the first tranche, there was a fair amount of money that went to what all of us would consider big businesses. The SBA is kind of going back at this point to a lot of those businesses, and if they haven't already volunteered to give it back, the SBA is going to them and say, hey, look, you're well funded. I know legally what you did was legal, but how about giving us back the money? So they're looking at that and making sure. The other thing they are looking at is for those big businesses that did that, they want to make sure that, they also didn't break any rules.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so one of the things, now I don't know if you can ask, there are a couple of HR questions. Can they require employees be tested as a pre-qualification for returning to work? Do you know if,
that's a state issue. That wouldn't be us. That would be a state issue.
Okay. There are a lot of questions about estimating when. I know it's very hard for you to estimate when the money's coming in. A lot of people have applied. A lot of people have been told they're going to get the money.
So here's what I can tell you about that. For the PPP, once your loan is submitting and everything is correct in the loan, because the other thing you got to remember, so the banks submit the information, SBA may come back and ask for more information. And that's fine. That does not change that does not put you to the end of the queue. You just, as soon as from what I'm hearing, as soon as the application is complete for the PPP, people are getting their money within 3 or 4 days. Okay, so once a completed application is received by SBA, you get your money pretty quickly. It's that application process that can take time for the PPP. For EIDL, there's no way of telling. They're still processing. They've been processing. It's on a first come, first serve. I've been hearing from folks, especially over the last 4 days, about money hitting their accounts and then the agency contacting them to fill out the loan paperwork. So it's coming, but for the EIDL, I can't tell you. For the PPP, again, you got to go to the bank. They'll be in the best position to tell you if you have been submitted. But again, watch the language from the bank, because unless it's been submitted and accepted or some version of that by the SBA, that probably means you're just in their queue to submit to the SBA.
One of the things that, Bill Schuler made, one of the things we've learned over the last few weeks is your relationship with your banker is so critical at getting the process. And so this person was saying that my clients report that they're local, smaller banks and where they have had the most success in getting the PPP. But it's really, even the big banks or small banks, it's all about having those solid relationships. So it's important, SBA doesn't control it. It's important to have that kind of relationship. And also, we know you can't answer a lot of the tax questions, but I have a lot of the tax questions. Tony, you want to say a little bit about the event you're having to deal with some of the tax implications?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. On May 13th at 11 a.m., if everybody wants to bookmark it, and I'll send it through Dale and Susan, but one of our accounting firms is going to have about a half-hour session just on the tax implications of CARES. So if anybody has any tax questions about the PPP or EIDL, you could join our event on, again, May 13th at 11 a.m. and we'll send you the information. Thanks, Dale.
Perfect. Thank you, Tony. As I said, we have a partnership with CIA and J. So one of the questions, Al, is there any tip on a particular time to apply in the day? Is there, does your staff, is it in the morning? Is it in the evening? I've gotten that from a lot of people. Did Al drop off? Okay. Let's see if
yeah, I don't see him, Dale.
yeah, he may have disappeared. Yeah, I think his my actually computer went out too for a second. So Tony, what have you've talked to some of the, you always typically on this thing give a legislative update. What are you hearing from the state, and what's going on?
Yeah, so this week was a big week in terms of obviously the governor laid out a 6-point plan or principles that have to be met in order to reopen our economy. And that was on Monday. On Tuesday, he formed his Economic Recovery Restart Commission. I could tell everybody that he's also going to announce next week various subcommittees depending on industry types, where the subcommittees will meet and then send up their suggestions, recommendations up to his commission on how best to restart the economy. So just stay tuned. Dale and I could work with you and your team, but we're hoping to at least be involved in some of the subcommittees and just trying to get some recommendations up. So I hope is that, this month in May that we start seeing a transition. Obviously the parks and the golf courses will be open tomorrow. It does look like the curve is starting to flatten, although, again, if it spikes up, the governor has been on record basically saying, he may pull back again. So this is going to be a dynamic process where, again, all the sectors are going to be working with the governor's office to make sure we could open up our economy in a safe manner. So if anybody has any ideas or suggestions, just either send them to Dale or send them to us at CIA and J. So that's really the big thing, Dale, is just next week we'll start seeing some of those subcommittees being rolled out.
Excellent. Thanks, Al. I actually dropped off a little bit myself, so you disappeared for a little bit. So
yeah, I don't know why, but modern miracles.
Yeah, modern miracles. Talk about in the few minutes we have. There are a number of people who've asked me about bonuses. And I know you said something about it, but reiterate some of that. So can bonuses
be? So if it's something that you've normally done in the time frame that's covered by the Payroll Act, that 8 weeks from when it hits your account, you could do it for that 8 weeks. Again, you can't use a whole year's bonus. So if you would normally pay the year's bonus during that 8-week period, that's not what the money's for. You can do the math and take, divide it by 52, times it by 8, and you could probably take it for that if it's something that's been done regularly. And you're going to have to prove that down the line. If it's something that you've done year over year, it should be okay. But if you want to use this just to reward people for coming back, no, you can't. That's not what it's for. And it's supposed to mimic the expenses. Let me put it to you that way.
Okay, okay. And so if a business has been struggling prior to the pandemic, is there any outside of it, doesn't apply to EIDL, PPP, are there any other, does SBA have any other loan
we have a lot of loan programs. Again, if you go to that, if you go to our website and that New Jersey resource guide on the lower left-hand corner, sba.gov/NJ, you'll be able to see the different programs. You know, one of the things we'll tell folks is take a look at the micro lenders in the state, you know, generally, especially the SBA approved ones. You know, they have to meet some pretty rigorous standards, and they're probably a good place to start, depending how much you need, you know, why you're struggling. I'd also strongly suggest that they talk to our small business development centers, our SCORE offices, or our women's centers. You know, maybe they're losing money for a reason. You know, I mean, we all know small business folks, you know, they're brave, they're courage, they're willing to get out there and do it, but not always the best at the business side. So that's why we have folks out there to help them.
So again, as we wind up, you know, one of the things, and that's why I started out, one of the things that's clear about this crisis is that America is really a small business economy. You know, America is a small business economy. And it seems like a lot of people in charge, you know, didn't understand that. So hopefully one of the good things that comes out of that is that as small business goes, America goes. And so, you know, so the SBA and other small business groups need to be beefed up. And obviously you can't necessarily comment on that politically, but, you know, obviously, you know, what have you learned from SBA as you look at small businesses in America and New Jersey and New York and this region? You know, what are you seeing are the needs?
Well, obviously, access to information is some of the biggest needs we have, and we all struggle with that. I think America's found out what we've known in the agency, and especially here in the districts, is just how important our small businesses are to the national economy. But I think the biggest thing we need for small businesses is knowledge. And, you know, the information's always been out there, but they really need to pay attention to their bottom lines, how their businesses work. Look at it, something like this, nobody could foresee. And there's just, who could foresee shutting down of the country for 6 weeks, right? You know, but normal, I hate to say it this way, but normal disasters, a lot of small businesses could get through better if they're better prepared for it. And I'm sure this is stuff you talk to with your family class and stuff. But you know, the biggest thing I think if we can all learn, and those of us that come out of this, you know, whole is, or at least partially whole, is, you know, go over everything. Are you paying rent on stuff you don't need? Is your place too big? If it's too small, that's fine too, but is your place too big if you have a brick and mortar place? I mean, those are the kinds of things you really got to look at. How are you paying your employees? You know, one of the big things we always tell our small businesses, you know, work smart, not hard. You know, if you've got more than 5 or 6 employees and you're still doing your own payroll and you're not hiring it out so that you can help get more business, more than likely, not 100% of the time, but more than likely, you're losing money. Because entrepreneurs are best at selling their business. That's how they got there, and that's what they should be putting all their time into. So I mean, it's really just the standard stuff.
Well, one, I'm going to give if Jonathan, you, Christina, have a question, but I wanted to ask you, Al, did you disappear again?
Nope, I'm here.
Are banks being capped at 10% for PPP loans? And then Jonathan, I don't know if you had any questions or anything. Are they?
Yeah, so they're being, I was reading through this. It's been a tough few weeks, so it's still kind of hard getting through my cranium. But yeah, there is a 10% cap. I believe it's a 10% of their value or what they're able to lend or something like that. So there is a 10% cap. It's probably designed just so that more local lenders get a chance to do it. You know, get a chance to go in there and you know, and lend. Gives more local folks a chance.
Excellent. Good. Jonathan, do you want to say anything before we go?
I just want to thank Al for, you know, his hard work and the administration's hard work. It's meaningful, and I think to his point earlier, you know, look, everybody's going to have a different experience with this depending upon who their bank is and what their particular situation is. but you may hear about other large tech companies hiring 175,000 new employees during this time. Neither the SBA nor the banks have had the luxury of hiring. So we're dealing with a lot of these applications with the same staff that we had previously. So, we spend a lot of time each day speaking with clients, helping them through either the loan application process or dealing with other areas of planning in their lives. And there's still just, one of us before they didn't hire lots of other versions of us going into this. So we're doing our best at our bank. We literally have people working 24 hours a day, submitting applications in shifts around the clock.
Wow, that's amazing. So there are a lot of specific questions we didn't cover here where we can actually cover that are unique to your case. We wanted to cover a lot of the generic questions, but I'd like all of you just to thank Al for your time. We appreciate there are a lot of places you could be, but thank you. You gave us a lot of good information. Remember, if you want some additional questions answered, Rothman at fdu.edu. We'll put together a list of questions. We'll get some answers to you. And good luck, everybody. This is a tough time, but there's a bright future ahead. Al, anything else you want to say to end?
No, I just want to thank you all for having me on. I really appreciate it. If you want to consolidate questions to send to me, I'd appreciate that. Just kind of group them up. But yeah, folks, and everybody out there, look, good luck, best of luck. We are working. We're trying to get this loans through, as Jonathan said. We are still working with the same staffs we had 2 months ago. So thank you and best of luck to everybody out there.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
And
Dale.
again, next week we have Tim Sullivan from the Economic Development Authority, who will be good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dale.
I just sent the
Bye.
email.
Thanks.
Email address.
Thank
Very
you.
good review.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.